Have you heard of the legendary warrior Mulan? As the story goes, she disguised herself as a man to go to war in place of her father. You might know her from the Disney movie about her life. It's the one with the talking dragon named Mushu and a lucky cricket. But did you know, Mulan's story has a very old history. As a matter of fact, her story is over 1,000 years old. While there isn't solid proof that Mulan was an actual person, her legend has been told and retold for centuries. Today, we're going to uncover the real history behind this famous tale. There aren't any talking dragons in this version, but I promise it'll still be a great adventure. This is the story of Mulan, the woman who would inspire generations.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. In today's episode, we are going to learn about the legend of Mulan and hear a few interesting parts of her story that may be a surprise. Legends play an important part in history, but sometimes it's hard for historians to distinguish fact from fiction. The story of Mulan is an old one, and the legend wasn't always written down. This means there are several versions of her legend that focus on different aspects of her story. From Mulan's flowery name to her feet, yes, you heard that correctly, we are going to travel back in time and learn about this woman warrior and the incredible legend that formed around her.
Our story begins in northern China over 1,500 years ago. A young woman named Mulan sat at her loom facing her front door. As she weaved her cloth, she began to sigh loudly, so loudly that it was impossible to ignore. What could be bothering Mulan? Last night, Mulan explained, I saw draft posters. The Emperor is calling many troops. The Emperor ruled the area where Mulan lived, and he was preparing for a war. Invaders were attacking, and he needed soldiers to fight back. The army list is in 12 scrolls, Mulan continued to explain. On every scroll, there's father's name. This meant only one thing. The Emperor was calling her father to battle, and her father could not refuse. But Mulan was very worried. Her father was older, and Mulan did not have an elder brother to serve in his place. She began thinking of a plan. I want to buy a saddle and a horse and serve in the army in father's place, she decided. Mulan raced to the marketplace to collect everything she needed for her daring plan. In the East Market, she bought a horse, one that had energy and could carry her on long journeys. In the West Market, she bought a saddle. In the South Market, she bought a bridle for her horse, and then in the North Market, she got a whip. Now, she had everything she needed. The next day, just before sunrise, Mulan dressed in her armor and said goodbye to her family. Riding on her horse, she journeyed to the Yellow River, where the army set up camp for the night. This river, known as Huanghe, is a huge river in China that stretches over 3,000 miles. Sitting next to the river, Mulan thought she heard her mother calling her name. But it was only the rumbling sound of water. She had to be brave and keep going. The next morning, she packed up her things and mounted her horse. Mulan and the soldiers journeyed all day until they finally reached the Black Mountain. During the night, Mulan wished she could hear her father's voice, but all she heard was the neigh of horses. It would be many years of war. During that time, Mulan traveled 10,000 miles and survived every hardship. She hiked through mountains as swiftly as a bird flying through the sky. During winter, she endured freezing nights and harsh winds. The cold light shined on Mulan's metal armor, and she could hear the sound of the army's gong. Mulan and the army had fought in over 100 battles. Their general had died, but many of the soldiers had survived. By now, Mulan had been away from home for 10 years. During this time, Mulan had earned respect as a skilled warrior. Tales of her achievements had made it to the ears of the emperor. Impressed by her bravery, he asked her to come to the palace. Mulan arrived not knowing what to expect. She saw the emperor sitting in the palace's grand hall and bowed before him. He spoke to Mulan and began offering her a promotion and many gifts. Mulan was grateful for this honor, but she only wanted one thing. "I ask for the swiftest horse to carry me back to my hometown," she told him. She wanted to see her family again. Back at her home, Mulan's parents heard horses trotting towards their house. They ran outside to see their daughter and a troop of soldiers coming towards them. Mulan's parents grabbed each other in excitement. They could not believe Mulan was finally home. Mulan's older sister heard the news and got dressed, and her younger brother began sharpening his cooking knife. He was already planning a feast for his sister's return. Mulan opened the door to her home and sat down on the couch. She was looking forward to taking off the heavy armor that she had been wearing for years. "I take off my wartime gown and put on my old-time clothes," she said. Mulan hung up a mirror to look at her reflection. She tied up her hair and placed a yellow flower in it. Dressed in her old clothes, she walked out the door to greet the soldiers still outside. The soldiers couldn't believe their eyes. "We traveled 12 years together, yet didn't realize Mulan was a lady," they said. In reply, Mulan told the soldiers a story about two rabbits. One was a male rabbit, and the other was a female rabbit. Sometimes it was easy to tell them apart, but other times it was not. "When the two rabbits run side by side to flee danger, how can you tell the female from the male?" Mulan asked. By dressing as a soldier, Mulan was able to go to war and save her father's life. The story of her bravery would be remembered and retold for centuries. You've just heard the original tale of Mulan. It comes from a poem written over 1,000 years ago. But did you know it may be even older than that? Historians think people used to memorize and tell the story to each other before it was finally written down. The poem is only 300 lines long, which is a very short story. But this little poem would inspire the creation of countless plays, books, and even movies. And here's a mystery that historians have been trying to solve for centuries. Did Mulan actually exist, or was she just a legendary figure?
Hi, young historians! Time for a quick break from this amazing story to tell you a bit more about Honest History. If you're enjoying this episode, then you'll love Honest History's magazines and books. Each one is filled with important adventures through the past, like the story of Chen Yisao, a Chinese woman who commanded one of the largest pirate fleets in history, to Mansa Musa from Africa, one of the wealthiest people to ever live. You can pick up a copy or subscribe and receive 3 issues delivered straight to your doorstep every 3 months. Just go to honesthistory.co and use code AnyTimeNow for a 10% discount. That's honesthistory.co and special promo code AnyTimeNow. Okay, let's get back to the story.
It's a question that has sparked debates for centuries. One historian thought she was real and had stories to prove it. The historian's name was Zhou Guozhen, and he lived in China 400 years ago. He gathered many stories and reports to support his claim. According to Zhou, there was a brave woman named Wei Mulan who fought in 18 battles for a ruler called Emperor Yang. However, as much as people were excited about Zhou's book, they soon realized there were some big problems. Zhou's facts didn't match up. For one thing, he got the timing all wrong. The poem of Mulan was written way before Emperor Yang was even born. So, as it turns out, Zhou didn't really have any good evidence to prove Mulan was real. Isn't it fascinating how history can sometimes be like a puzzle? There are still many mysteries waiting to be solved. While historians continue to debate if Mulan existed, for now, most agree that she's likely a legend. I'm gonna guess that many of you have heard of Mulan before. And if you haven't, it's easy to find films and books about her. But did you know she wasn't always so well known? In fact, her story only started to become popular in the 1500s. That's nearly 1,000 years after it was first written down. And historians often thank an artist and writer named Zhu Wei for this. Zhu Wei lived in China during the 16th century, over 400 years ago. He wanted to use the poem as inspiration to write an entertaining play. He decided to give Mulan the last name Hua. In Mandarin, Hua means flower. He also gave names to all the different people in the story, like Mulan's father, mother, brother, and sister. The original poem was written very long ago, but Zhu Wei didn't think about making his play historically accurate. He wanted to write something that would entertain people from his own time, for folks in the 16th century. And this was important because it meant that his play would tell us a lot about the world Zhu Wei lived in. Zhu Wei added some very strange parts to the story. For one thing, he added a big part about Mulan's feet. Now, you might be thinking, what was wrong with Mulan's feet? Well, during Zhu Wei's time, it was common for women to bind their feet. In the 16th century, it was seen as beautiful to have feet of a certain shape and size. Starting as young girls, women began to tightly wrap their feet to change their shape. But this practice was very dangerous and very painful. It's not something anyone should do. Now, because only women bound their feet, Zhu Wei decided Mulan would have to unwrap the bandages to disguise herself as a man. There was another thing Zhu Wei added, a different ending. In his play, he decided that Mulan would get married to her neighbor, so his play finished with a wedding celebration. Today, historians haven't found evidence that the play was performed, but it's easy to imagine what it would have looked like. Zhu Wei wrote down stage directions that tell us when characters appeared on stage and changed costumes. This helps us understand what it would have looked like if we were sitting in the audience watching. Zhu Wei titled his work, "The Heroine Mulan Goes to War in Her Father's Place." Little did he know, it would become one of his most famous plays. And it would make the story of Mulan popular throughout China. The legend of the female warrior continued to spread far and wide. Over 70 years later, another author came along to write a popular novel inspired by Mulan's story. And there would be a whole new play after that. For centuries now, Mulan's story has been told and retold, changing along the way. Have you ever watched Disney's animated movie, Mulan? You may notice it's a little bit different from the story you heard today. For one thing, there's a talking dragon. But there are a lot of other things that stayed the same, too. In both stories, Mulan broke tradition to save her father's life. After fighting in battle, she returned home a hero. Fast forward to today, and guess what? There are tons of amazing films and books inspired by Mulan's extraordinary journey. This mighty warrior has become a symbol of courage and loyalty in Chinese culture. And while it's hard to prove she existed, the story of women warriors is as real as can be. There are so many countless examples of fearless female soldiers throughout history. Can you think of any brave women in your own life? Maybe it's someone in your family, a friend, a teacher who, like Mulan, would do anything to help their loved ones. Examples of fearless women are all around us.
Welcome back. It's always fun to learn more about a story when we think we know all the facts. That's the beauty of history. There is always more to uncover and always more to learn. We may never know if Mulan's story is true, but we do know that her legend inspired men and women for centuries and continues to do so to this day. That's all for now. But if you want to learn more about brave women in Chinese history, be sure to check out issue 2 of Honest History, A Pirate's Tale. You will learn all about the female pirate king Cheng Yisao and how she became the most successful pirate in history. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time. This episode was hosted by Jason Lee and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Randall Lawrence and Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about this episode, including more about the host, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media at Honest History.
When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's honest, it's fun, and it's sure to